Okay, so before we start, I'm going to say John has gone above me on. He's done his homework for this session. You watched, what was it, Kate's Peer Connect from the other day?
Yeah, the CFM Pure Connect, which is for folks who maybe aren't familiar, it's basically a kind of a community platform where we get customers to come and tell their success stories and kind of all customer led activities with breakout rooms and all kinds of cool stuff. And Kate did a killer one. When was this? Maybe just a couple months back.
I think September timeframe, right around there, last year, end of last year sometime.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah,
There's a link in there.
So check that one out after everyone gets a chance to kind of watch our session today. Great one to revisit and kind of see all the other details Kate had shared last time.
Yeah, I'd very recommend joining those peer connects. I think I used to do it when I was a customer, and they're really good fun to share stories and not hear from maybe people like me and John who are Amazon employees to kind of tell you stuff. It's actually hearing from each other, hence the peer element to it. So yeah, really recommend. Okay, cool. All right, let's get into the show. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I'm a Senior Optimization Architect at AWS in the Optics team. John?
Yeah, and I'm John Massey. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm a peer of Steph's as a optimization architect working with our strategic accounts here at AWS.
And today we're going to be talking with Kate here from Liberty Mutual, and we're going to be talking about automating with FinOps. So we've had a similar kind of conversation recently about some real in-depth concepts around automating a specific concept. That was a couple of weeks ago. But this time we're going to go a little bit high level. We're going to look at the roles in which Kate played in this kind of thing, and also the kind of approach she took into it. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if you are watching on YouTube, then drop a comment down below and we'll reply. And also, if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of our videos. So Kate, do you want to kick us off with your 1-minute origin story?
Sure thing. I'd be happy to. Thank you, Steph. So hi, everyone. My name is Kate Ferguson. I'm currently a senior data analyst at Liberty Mutual on the Cloud FinOps team. And I always like to tell people I kind of fell into FinOps. I was like, I want to be a financial analyst for technology. And Liberty Mutual had that job posting. So I applied. I had studied finance and MIS in college. And I kind of applied not knowing what team I would get landed on. That was based on need. And I got put on the Cloud FinOps team. And I've been here really ever since. So we moved from finance to technology. And almost everything has been learned on the job, through YouTube, through sessions like this, the FinOps Foundation. So it's been a roller coaster, but it's been really fun working with the team and growing it over time.
And that's so cool that you came in straight to this FinOps role, right?
Yeah, I think it's new, right? No one else does that previously.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I started as a dev and then started doing this role and then heard about FinOps through kind of the grapevine and was like, okay, I'm doing that now. I just took that name and I was like, sure. I mean, John, what about you? How did you come into this world of FinOps?
I'm trying to remember now at this point. Yeah, I worked for a startup that was focused on cloud governance, and that kind of started to bleed over into the FinOps world, sort of as that was starting to make a name for itself and become something I think people were starting to pin into a specific category.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely grown over time. And now there's whole conferences dedicated to it, like FinOpsX. So lots of things going on. So Kate, let's dive into a bit more about your role and kind of this FinOps versus tech kind of area. What's the kind of day-to-day that you do in this area?
Yeah, so although we're talking about automating FinOps, I am definitely more on the business side of the automation. So day to day, it's really different, as anyone in FinOps, I'm sure, can sympathize with. But it's really sort of looking at the data, right? Understanding, collaborating with customers to educate them, help them understand what they're spending on, where might be some rooms for optimization, understanding their struggles, and also meeting with other stakeholders, really just to provide that cost transparency and awareness. And so through that work, I've really gotten to work with our core AWS team. I've gotten to work with huge data lakes in our company, and all the way down to just teams with one application that's pretty small, right? But every penny counts, like we like to say. So we're happy to save money wherever we can.
And Kate, you're kind of touching on it now a little bit, but even in this world where folks kind of have all that automation put in place, it doesn't mean that it's something that is just kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like even when the automation is there, what are maybe some of those like elements that still require like, human touch and, more hands-on engagement?
What a great question. Yeah. So we like at Liberty Mutual, our team is small but mighty. So we're 5 people for 5,000 engineers. Like that scope is just outrageous. So really the ability to automate offloads some of the manual redundant tasks. So when I joined, a lot of the work that we were doing was export from AWS console or a homegrown tool, look at it in Excel, copy paste into PowerPoints, et cetera. But now we have automated reporting. We can push reporting to all application owners. And then when we have those monthly meetings, it's more meaningful, right? I can be like, okay, here's the change in your spend. Besides the number, this is what that means. And also, I just learned this cool new things at reInvent or FinOps X, and I think that would be a great opportunity for you in your application. So it helps sort of with the human side and the analysis side rather than just like giving data out, which is what the automation helps with, and the cleanup as well.
Yeah. And the and the what was I gonna say? The thing you just mentioned about 5 to 5,000 is kind of crazy when you think about the scope of that. And I think that does happen with a lot of these centralized teams. And I think that's a great example of showing that you don't need like a team of 20 or something. You don't need a huge amount of resources. I mean, it'd be nice, but you don't need it to have a FinOps kind of set up in your organization. So if you're a lot smaller and you are thinking, I do want to start doing FinOps and I do want to make sure that my business is aware of these kind of cost mechanisms, that you maybe just have to train kind of 1 or 2 people, and there needs to be like an awareness of it. But I wanted to jump into what you just mentioned about your regular meetings with the kind of users that you're helping optimize their spend. Could you give us a breakdown as like of a typical meeting? What kind of things you go through?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple of standard meetings and some random ad hoc, right? We notice someone has an anomaly and we reach out and be like, let's do a deep dive. But really, typically what we look at is spend by account or product, depending on how that app portfolio is set up. Then we dig into sort of like the levers or sort of deeper details of, say, their RDS spend or red search, how much of that is on demand, what's their savings versus on demand for your reservations, right? How can we maximize that potential? We also look at shutdown, right? So we have opt-out shutdown in place for EC2 and RDS instances. So we look at, if you're not shutting down, why? Why aren't you shutting down? Let's have that discussion. What's preventing you? And then also right-sizing recommendations, just to sort of provide that awareness and be like, hey, we know that this is out there, but what can you do about it? And then typically leave a lot of room for questions, especially if it's one of the earlier meetings with us. So it's a whole new world. Like we had to learn it and they have to learn it too, right?
For those meetings, I'm just curious too, who's the audience on that side? Like what level of roles are there, and maybe you can kind of set that stage for us.
Yeah, so typically when we do monthly meetings, it's with app teams. So that means that we typically have solutions engineer, maybe some senior software engineers on the team, the product owner, manager, and director if they want it. But we also have quarterly reviews that we like to say with architects across our organization. So we have multiple business units to sort of collaborate on optimization opportunities, right? What have they heard? What do they want to try out? And what do we want to start pushing? In addition, with our finance people on the business side, sort of helping them understand the changes in cloud spend. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like in our room, mixed bag. I mean, and I know this is, we're talking about automating in FinOps, but this always happens when we get a customer on the show. I feel like we kind of dive in and want to know more about the individual parts they do. I want to ask one more question on the meeting before we jump into some of the automation stuff. Where did the meeting come about from? Was this a drive from your FinOps team to start hosting that? Or was there also a bit of a drive from kind of a top-down approach to ensure that teams would take this seriously? Or is it like you can join the meeting if you want kind of optional thing that you guys offer?
It's kind of both. So you'll notice, as I'm sure many other large organizations have, like it top down sets sort of the culture of cost awareness and cost, like penny pinching or cost, like trying to save money. So those teams typically reach out and be like, hey, we know that we just got this bill from you guys and we're spending a lot of money. Let's talk about this. Other times it's like, hey, we noticed this weird spike. Let's talk about this. So it sort of goes both ways. But yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So again, some people might have joined on the stream, so welcome. And if you're here, we are talking about automation in FinOps. So we'll get back to that. So you did mention scheduling being one of the things that you look down or shutdowns. Do you want to go into a bit more about the criteria that you look at with scheduling, if you're aware of kind of what often kind of types of accounts are you looking at when you're suggesting people schedule their resources?
Yeah, so for scheduling, we mostly focus on non-prod and development accounts, really because we don't want to hurt anything in prod that probably needs to be up 24/7. And Sandbox, we already have rules in place to clean that up after a certain amount of time if it's still there. So the shutdown is really focused on non-prod and dev, EC2 and RDS. But we also have a couple of different scheduling options based on the time zone, right? Based on the region where they're located. And even that doesn't capture everything. So we're also rolling out a new automation strategy for unattached RDS instances. So if you've been unattached RDS instance for 14 or more days, we're shutting you down 24/7 on that compute. And then eventually we're going to hope to get to the point to delete once we build the trust and transparency into that. Just to sort of enforce some of that cleanup and just have a healthy cloud portfolio.
Nice. And where are you getting the unattached data from? Is that from something like Trusted Advisor, or is that your own kind of test that you're doing?
So we have, so we're leveraging an open source tool called Cloud Custodian.
Oh, yes. Cloud Custodian,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, and so that's going out and essentially scanning every single RDS instance that we have, all accounts, all regions, and identifying how long it's been unattached. And then we send a notification to the owners of those applications or artifacts and being like, hey, just so you know, we're going to shut this down in 14 days if you don't delete it or turn it back on. Just let them know.
Give them a heads up.
Yeah.
Now share a link to Cloud Custodian in the chat. Never been able to. I've never used it before, so interesting to hear your area. Many of your customers using it, John?
We've got quite a few. I think depending on if the customer has a structure that's put in place to help them kind of run this more centrally. And it sounds like, Kate, is that how Liberty does it, or is that kind of a model that you guys find works well? Is using the tool centrally, or do teams kind of get the opportunity to run that just within their own line of business?
So currently, so it's still new. So we're probably like 2 quarters into using this and deploying it and actually taking action. But I would say it's more central right now from the FinOps team out. We have a solutions engineer who heard about it and he's like, let's just roll this out. And so it's really to help with the death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like there are so many EBS volumes, RDS instances that just kind of get lingered out there. And at the end of the day, that all adds up. So it's trying to help clean that up.
And you mentioned that it's a little bit new. I'm kind of curious, like maybe a little bit less technical, but starting the adoption on that, any like kind of lessons learned or like guidance for other folks? I know folks are always cautious when it comes to automation with, no one wants to turn on a switch and just, get any kind of surprises. Was there, I guess a process for implementing it you found worked well?
Yeah, no, so we definitely learned that as well, John. So it's kind of like reestablishing trust again with the same customers, right? Like they trust us to be the source of truth for cost information, for optimization data. But when it comes to taking action on their resources, it was almost rebuilding that trust to go one layer further. So we sort of have had Cloud Custodian deployed probably about a year now. And it was just sort of to understand like the discovery phase, right? Like what is out there? What is opportunity? Help us prioritize. What do we want to get buy-in on first? And so we had that running out there. So we had like 6 months of data by the time we actually went to customers and said, hey, we want to shut down your RDS instances. And here's why it costs X thousands of dollars each year. They're like, oh, wow, that's a lot. So then we started rolling it out in Sandbox accounts, dev accounts, working our way up business unit by business unit. And then using that as a use case to be like, okay, this business unit just did it in production even, and they were fine. So you will be too. And sort of using that story around. And now it's getting a little bit easier to deploy new policies. And our goal is hopefully we just it's easy, right? We can just clean up what we need as we learn about it. That's the goal.
You mentioned something there too that I wanted to just like kind of go back to was that, your team kind of had the trust, which is, super powerful, right? And the other side of it was you mentioned the partnership with kind of like a solution engineer who found that. I'm just curious about, maybe how any of these, like, I don't know, I guess we look at it maybe a little bit like organizational partnership where, there's folks on the solution engineering team, there's trust between app teams and, FinOps teams. Could you maybe just like, I guess, talk about how all those partnerships work a little bit, or, keys to success and anything like that you found to kind of be helpful with the adoption of the technical solution?
I think the biggest thing is no one can know it all in the cloud, right? Like you're never going to be able to keep track of all the optimization levers or all of the ways that you can clean up or all the new tools. I feel like there's a new tool every single day that comes out helping you to optimize. So we actually have a solutions engineer embedded on our FinOps team, in addition to the data analyst and a product owner. But none of this is really possible without the buy-in from architects across different business units and sort of top-down communicating that however it makes sense, given that business unit's culture and how their cloud is set up. In addition to our central AWS partnership, like a team that manages our AWS platform internally, just to make sure we have the right compliance, the right rules in place to make sure we don't actually delete one of the most important claims applications, say for Liberty Mutual, just to make sure we don't do anything bad on purpose.
Yeah. Don't want to get caught being like, where's that instance gone? Oh no.
Yeah.
You don't want that emailed. And the thing you mentioned about having a technical person like dedicated to the FinOps team, I think it's becoming more of a trend. I was at the FinOps Foundation, the FinOps UK meetup, and Sky was talking, and they had two people there, and one was like the tech guy and one was the business guy. And you need that kind of bit of both sides to understand how to go in and fix stuff, but also why you need to fix stuff and how to talk to the rest of the business, explain from like a high up point of view, but you also need the tech side to explain to technical people. And I think something else that you mentioned that's really good is that once you get like one person to do it, then it makes doing it with other people easier because you have that evidence, like you said. You guys said, oh, it worked with these people, and then you can also get feedback from them. So yeah, really developing that relationship with architects is definitely a great idea.
And it helps keep you grounded, right? Sometimes I'm like, I have this idea. Is this even possible? And they're like, no, Kate, why would that be possible? And sometimes it's actually feasible. So it's good to have that check.
I think I love that, being on the like somewhat more technical side, when people used to come to me and be like, is this something that can happen? And you're like, oh yeah, it's like super easy. And then they're just like, especially finance, just baffled by Excel sheets, which is just makes me feel good because I'm helping them in a way that maybe if they're not used to it, they can't see. But yeah, awesome. So we talked about scheduling. Are there any kind of other automation things that you look at or use?
Yeah, so we're actually using automation for some of our reporting, which has been the biggest lift for us as analysts. So we actually, and I think this might be part of my talk at FinOps X too, so you get a little preview, but it's sort of like putting reporting in the path of engineers, in the path of application owners, and things like that, just to automatically create reports and send it out. It's almost like an electric bill, what we do, right? At the end of the month, you see how much you spent, how much you saved, and where the optimization opportunities are. And then from that, we can sort of derive an efficiency score to see how efficient are you, which is helpful. So that's one of the biggest ones we've had. We also handle anomalies somewhat automated in the sense that we sort of pull those in and we see, are they real? And then if they are real, then we can just send those out to the IT owners wherever possible.
Nice.
Okay, do you think there's any data that gets shown back in those reports that, like, I don't know, maybe folks aren't thinking about that is potentially valuable? And I guess where I'm going with this is that sometimes we just look at like the monthly bill, what comes in. But I'm curious if you guys share any information on like, hey, the automation is saving you X amount, or what you're doing is doing great, like, kind of encouraging folks. Is there any data points out there that you found that, maybe folks aren't thinking about right now?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest eye-opening data points when we send out these statements is sort of how much spend they have in Dev and Sandbox. Oftentimes they're like, oh, I thought we cleaned that up like months ago, and it's not deleted. So they'll find that opportunity. But I have to manually calculate right now. We're working on automating it. Like all the random savings that we don't have automated right now. So say a team takes a right sizing action. We want to give them credit for that and say, hey, look, guys, you're doing great. Keep up the good work. We love that you modernized your Redshift instance or whatever it is. And so we give them credit for that and try to show it back wherever possible, in addition to setting targets with app teams and business units for cost avoidance for the year.
And how's the data received? Do you think it is it something where they see that and they're like, oh yeah, exactly what we expected, or does it surprise them how much they were able to save?
I'd say it depends on their interaction with us, right? If they have never heard of the Cloud FinOps team and now all of a sudden they're getting a statement, they're like, I've never seen this bill before. What is this? And they have a ton of questions. But if it's someone where they at least know that we exist, they know of the self-service reporting that's available, they're like, oh yeah, that checks out. We went up $200 last month because we had this event go on. So it really depends.
Yeah, the things of like spiking with dev and sandbox is brilliant because people just be like, oh yeah, it'll probably get removed or I'll delete it later, and then you come back. We even do that. I like look at I have to write notes to be like, Steph, go and delete this thing if I'm trying to generate some cost and usage report data to make sure I don't lose it. No, yeah, the relationship you seem to have with the rest of your company in terms of the devs just seems like something to really look up to and really aspire to be, especially that kind of trust that you build to listen. One thing, I had something else and I totally got out of my head, so I'm just going to jump on something else. I wanted to ask John. Now, John, I want to give you an opportunity to tell everyone about one of probably your favorite automation things, which is S3. Oh my God, intelligent tiering. Do you want to, that's like I don't know if you use much of it, Kate, but John loves it. Do you want to give a summary of what that is so people can make sure that they check that out as well?
Sure. Yeah. So intelligent tiering is a S3 storage class that basically automates the transition of your objects based on their access patterns into different tiers to help save money. So instead of having to, kind of pinpoint exactly when an object goes to an infrequently accessed mode where you're not going to touch it for a while, it's going to track those access patterns. And if it's not used in 30 days, it moves it to a tier that's similarly priced to infrequent access. And if it's not used for, a total of 90 days, it moves it to a tier that's similarly priced to Glacier. So kind of put your objects in there and then let this automation kind of within the storage class handle all the savings for you without you having to track that yourself.
One of the always just really simple automations that you'd have to build. And I remembered what I was going to ask. Kate, you were talking about the tracking, the optimizations, about telling people well done. This is something that one of my customers actually started to think about. And I think what we're looking at is using things like keeping a set of data from previous months of, say, for example, could be Optimizer and saying, last month you had 20 instances out of 40 highlighted that are over provisioned. This month you only have 10. Well done, you've done well. That's what we're thinking about doing. Have you got any plans around that idea, like where you're starting to look at having these this way of tracking it?
Yeah, so that's actually how we calculate savings for right sizing now. I've learned if you ask anyone how they capture right sizing savings, there's no single answer. So we actually get recommendations, and then based on the month over month delta, that's how we give 1 month of savings. Mm-hmm. And so I like the idea of kind of showing month over month. What does that look like? Especially with S3, I will say, like, going back to John's point, like, I've seen 4 to 5 figure changes in monthly spend for S3 just by moving to intelligent tiering. And it's super powerful. So that's one area where we're definitely looking to expand, sort of understanding what is our current S3 footprint and how do we make the most of the intelligent tiering, right? To make the monitoring or whatever else worth it, right? So that's exciting for this year.
Yeah, definitely. The kind of, because patting people on the back and saying, well done, you did it, is so good. And I think people forget. And just a reminder, so Compute Optimizer is a free service that AWS provides to using ML to provide you recommendations to improve your compute performance, whether your resources are provisioned correctly, over provisioned, or under provisioned. And it works for, is ECS the new one? John, is that the new one?
For Compute Optimizer?
Yeah, I think it is.
Good question. I've got to have to double check that.
I'm pretty sure that's the new one.
We've got,
there's EC2, ASG, Lambda, EBS, and I think ECS now. But what's great about it is it gives you these recommendations, but the data kind of changes every 2 weeks, so approximately. So if you make that recommendation and it says, oh, it's optimal now, and you go to your manager and say, look, I changed this from it wasn't correctly provisioned and now it is, they're kind of like, oh, really? It just says it's done correctly. Like, how do you prove this? I don't think everyone's going to do that, but I think that having an automated way of doing it, whether it's in a dashboard, like the Cloud Intelligence dashboards for the cards table, would be a good example. We've got a question in the chat, so I'm going to throw this up. So should we use S3 intelligent tiering ring as default? I assume that means tier as default. What are the expectations? I mean, John, do you want to go for that first? And then Kate, do you have any other things to add?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely seen a lot of customers use this as kind of a standard within their organization. And the reason why is something I touched on a few minutes ago. If they can't pinpoint exactly when certain objects are going to become infrequently accessed, intelligent tiering will do that heavy lifting for you. And for a lot of folks, that covers the majority of their use cases, unless it's something where they know exactly when those objects are going to either be expired or go to an archive class. So a lot of folks are using intelligent tiering as, a standard or a default. And the follow-up there is what are some of the exceptions? And I mentioned that the tiering will happen. The first phase of it happens after 30 days of inactivity for the objects. So you could think about it. If you had a use case where maybe you're only retaining those objects for less than 30 days, that might be one of the exceptions. So maybe a common scenario there is like a logging scenario. I'm generating logs and I'm rolling those off every 14 days or something like that. That wouldn't be a good fit for intelligent tiering because we'll never get to that point in time where we'd be able to achieve the benefit. There's a small monthly monitoring fee that comes along with intelligent tiering too. It's about $2.50 per million objects per month. And you can calculate that out based on what your object count is. So it's really small in terms of the return that you're getting, but you got to just make sure that those objects are going to live for at least 30 days and will become infrequently accessed to achieve the benefits there.
Great. Kate, have you set it by default or are you still doing it on a case by case?
Case by case right now. I will say we are going to roll out sort of a cloud FinOps optimization competition in one of our business units, and that is a bingo tile, is evaluate your S3 storage and see if you can move it to intelligent tiering, if that makes sense. So I'll keep you posted on how that turns out. But
yeah, a bingo tile. Oh, before I forget, the person also shared, yes, it is ECS service for Fargate is the other one. Thank you in the chat for sending me that. A bingo tile. Okay, we have to know more.
Yeah, I was going to say, my ears perked up then too. I got to hear more about this.
So we tried this out last year in our own department, and now we're trying to roll it out sort of enterprise-wide. But essentially, it's a 4x4 bingo card with different optimization activities and things like that, and educational activities as well, just to learn what is FinOps, how much do you spend, how much are you optimizing, do you have a healthy footprint, things like that. So looking at the shutdown, looking at right-sizing recommendations, letting us know what they think FinOps does, which is always fun. Just so that in case we're missing people with where we're putting the reporting, they can start to learn more about FinOps habits.
That's great. I like that. I might steal that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Fun little activity. Yeah, just to keep it, because FinOps is always happening. I don't think the word then. It's a consistent cycle. So getting people to be aware and telling you what they think is pretty good. We did a fin hack the other day, and we had a scavenger hunt, which is something that John and I came up with, I think, or John came up with when we did a fin hack for someone else. So still using the scavenger hunt for customers. So that's really good.
It's got to be fun, right? It's got to be fun. Yeah. No one's going to do it.
Prizes.
There's got to be prizes.
Yeah, there's got to be Steph. Yeah, Steph is definitely a champion behind that one. I'm curious, Kate, what kind of prizes, do you think are good ones that get folks excited?
Swag for sure. And we also have an internal reward system. So giving them X amount of points for first place, X amount of points for second and third also helps.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, who did swag? I love swag.
Yeah,
John's covered in swag.
I was gonna say sometimes it's like that scene in Wayne's World, where they had all the advertisements on them. I don't know, maybe I'm aging myself, but I just it's all swag every time. We're suckers for it.
We love swag. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got 2 minutes left. Kate, is there anything else you wanted to cover about automation that you haven't touched on? We did talk about bringing up drift conversation in terms of cleaning stuff up in infrastructure as code. Do you want to touch on that at all?
I can. I will say I'm not the most technical, so I'm not entirely sure I can answer it to the level that you might want it. But essentially, one area where drift might occur is, say that we're scanning in a discovery phase and we sort of lock it down and say, oh, we saw that on March 9th, 2023. This was unattached, so we're going to delete it in 5 days. But then being able to identify, oh, it was turned back on in the past 5 days when we go to turn it off. Just making sure that you're aware of that before taking any action. I think that's what we're going to touch on, Steph. But
yeah. No, but that's a good way of doing it, I think, because so the thing we're talking about with Drift, I'll do it in the last 20 seconds, is that when you do automate deleting resources, if it's in infrastructure as code, that infrastructure as code will just spin it back up again. So that is a bit of a risk. But I like this way of you tracking it. So I think that's something people don't do necessarily, maybe, is they think, oh, okay, I've deleted it. And then the next month it comes back up, but they maybe don't pay attention to the fact that it's the same thing. So making sure maybe that's a bit of an alert sounds like a good method. All right, awesome. Okay, so we're at time. Thank you so much for joining us, Kate. That was great fun. Thanks everyone for watching. And we will see you next week when we're talking about the others based on mine and Yuri's reInvent talk. So yeah, see you then. Thanks, guys.